Good to see everybody. We will call to order at 5:05 this evening. And if we could unmute for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of
of
the
the
United States
of America
and to the
Republic
for
which
which
it
it
stands
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty
and justice.
justice for all. Excellent. Thank you so much, everybody. Next order of business on our agenda is public comment. So we are completely virtual this evening. So our public comment will follow suit as well. Devin does have the directions on the screen for us, but once again, if you are interested in providing public comment, please raise your hand and we'll make sure you are able to unmute and provide that comment. Anybody, Devin?
Not seeing any hands at the moment. We'll give it a couple more seconds.
Perfect. All right, I think we are good to go. So we'll go ahead and move on to minutes. So could I please have a motion to approve the attached January 19th, 2022 minutes?
This is Wendy, motion to approve.
Second, John Carrier.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimously approved. We'll move on to item E on the agenda, which is correspondence received January 14th through January 31st of this year. We did not receive any, but I do always take the opportunity here to remind those of us joining us tonight, as well as anybody who might watch this via Facebook Live after the fact, to please always remember you can go to our webpage. There's a contact form if you scroll right down to the bottom of our homepage that you can ask us questions at any time. So we encourage community members, please take advantage of that. If you have any questions about any of our documentation, anything you see on the website or anything you hear discussed in meetings, please take the opportunity to use that form. We will get responses and complete and thorough responses back out to you as soon as we possibly can. So that opportunity always exists, and we really do encourage people to go ahead and use that. Okay, we're going to go right into reports for the evening. For chair report, I just have two items. The first one is kind of a housekeeping item that we need to take care of. So if you remember from our conversation at our last meeting, we did have some discussion around an early enabling package. We do have some additional information to share tonight around early enabling. So what I'm going to ask for now is a motion to add an agenda item, which would be G5 to the agenda to discuss and give direction on an early enabling package, so that we can continue that conversation, provide additional detail, and kind of further our discussion. If I could just get a motion to add the agenda item, then we'll have the discussion later on.
Yeah, this is Wendy. I'll motion to add the agenda.
I'll second, Johnny.
Any discussion at this point about, at least about adding the agenda item? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, unanimously approved. Thank you, everybody. So you'll see us continue that discussion later on in new business. The other update that I'm actually going to ask Kat to give us an update about some conversations we are having with some of our state reps and some further conversation and details. So Kat, if you want to give us a quick update there.
Yes, the only update is that members of our legislative delegation reached out to us to initiate a meeting to discuss special legislation for the upcoming session on the reimbursement for the 900 wing and all of those things. So myself and Kathy Greeter and Kathy Blonsky have a meeting tomorrow afternoon with our legislative delegation because the session starts next week. So we kind of want to hit the ground running and make sure we're prepared for any required special legislation.
Any questions for Kat? And then I just want to make sure everybody knows this was about that question and the change in the reimbursement amount. Does that make sense to everybody? And kind of next steps, we just want to keep everybody updated on the progress we're making there. Any questions? Everybody's good? Excellent. Thank you, Kat. So we're going to go right into additional reports. So this would be Town Council Liaison report. So Johnny?
Yep, just quickly, the 1928 Ad Hoc Committee met today with some of the partners just to kind of get high-level overview of dates and things like that. But that's all we have for today.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Johnny? All right, we'll move on to Board of Education Liaison report. Beth?
Yes, so really, again, board is going to be very focused on budget. We have our budget workshop coming up on Saturday. That doesn't really affect this project, but just to give you a glimpse into what we'll be busy with. So those conversations are starting. And Meg, you updated in your chair report, but I wanted to let the group know that the state delegation was, every year they come to Board of Education this time of year, and they were at our last meeting, and we had lots of different discussion points around education and the upcoming session, but it was expressed to them by several board members and the superintendent, just the concern that we had about the reimbursement issue. So I'm so glad to hear that that's happening now, and you have a meeting set up to move that along, and they'll be advocating for us at the Capitol. So that is it.
Great. Thanks, Beth. Any questions for Beth? All right, we'll move right on to Owner's Rep report.
Hi, good evening, everybody. We are working, CSG working on a couple of the budget updates. So we had original budgets that we had prepared, and what we're trying to do is just break them out as the state has approved them. So really what that means is just moving the field house into the Farmington High School budget and out of what we were calling the 900 wing budget to segregate central office. So just trying to make those changes and be able to sort of show the roadmap moving forward. The numbers obviously don't change, but the bottom line doesn't change, but some of the buckets might look a little different. So construction costs will be a little different, because field house costs will go from one to the other. Same thing with certain percentages of professional fees, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to make sure that we've got a good balance moving in, because we know what our bottom line numbers are. We just need to establish those budgets so we can track dollars moving forward. We're working on finalizing some of the contracts for our CM and our third-party peer reviewer. We did receive some contract amendments from TSKP to separate their contracts based on the two projects, their scope of work rather, and then to include the ad services, if you recall, that were approved previously for theater design, universal design, engineering, culinary design, right? So those things we want to just we want to document and make sure that their contract reflects those ad services. So that's what we've been working on.
Great, thanks, Mark. Any questions for Mark? All right, we'll move right on to architect report.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm here with Michael Scott. I'll do some of the presentation this evening, the updates, and then Michael will take some of it as well. There are 4 items I wanted to update the committee with. First of all, I reported at the last committee meeting that we would that we received the commentary from the Universal Design Consultant, the Institute for Human-Centered Design. There are a total of about 96 comments. Some of them are easy, we understand them. Some of them, I still need to do a little bit of questioning from Universal Design what they mean. So we're not quite there with our responses. We referred the comments to the appropriate sub-consultants. Some of them have to do with site details. So I hope that by the next committee meeting, we will be able to give you the commentary. But this is going to be all incorporated into the plans, and that we still have the consortium document phase to proceed with. So this item will be continued. The second is that immediately after the last committee meeting, we had a working session with our landscape architect and our civil engineer, Richter and Segan, and SLR, to get the ball rolling on the schematic design development phases for the early enabling package. We had a good conversation about where the construction fence should go in order to determine how many parking spaces will be affected, to determine then how many temporary parking spaces need to be created, what the appropriate path from the temporary spaces for pedestrian path leading up to the school. We talked about also just how much stockpile material needed to be contained on the site. This is the topsoil that needs to be stripped. So O&G gave us a quantity, and we're expecting to get from SLR and O&G a diagram that shows all of these things. The location of the construction fence, the location of the stockpiles, the size of the parking lot, temporary parking lot, as well as a interim car and school bus queuing strategy during construction. So that's in the works. I hope to have that information with you for you at the next committee meeting. As Johnny mentioned, the third item, as Johnny mentioned, we had a discussion about the 1928 building. I know that there's a group that's working through that and discussing various possibilities. I think that it may be helpful if we prepared some diagrams to help illustrate what those possibilities are, Johnny. So we were going to reach out to you after this meeting, and maybe we can discuss creating some diagrams for your benefit. I think a picture is worth 1,000 words, so we'd be more than happy to do that. The fourth item I wanted to talk about is that Michael Scott did have a meeting with the town planner and planning staff to discuss the special permit site plan approval process, what the dates are, what the potential public hearing dates might be. And so I'm going to ask Michael to give us a little bit more information about what that meeting was like.
Yeah, thank you. It was a good meeting, very productive. We are going to target this session, the end of the month, February 23rd, for the special permit application to be received. That means that we will file a formal application with the planning office on February 18th, and then follow up with our technical drawings by February 25th. These are the same drawings that landscape and civil would use for the DD package, which we're also concluding this month. So both of those deadlines are very doable. Once the application is received on the 23rd, a public hearing will be set for March 21st. And that's when the actual special permit will be heard for the public. And by that time, we'll have most of the staff's technical comments as well. So that's when we will hit all of that. And everyone seems, I mean, most of the professional staff at Town Hall is well coached on the application. They understand its contents and its scope. There are some new planning and zoning members, so that, you know, part of that initial public hearing may be just making sure everyone's up to speed, but it, everyone's excited about it and looking forward to it. That's it.
That's it. Any questions?
Any questions from anybody? We're all good? I know we're gonna be having some more detailed questions or conversation in new business, but excellent, thank you. All right, we're gonna go right on to construction manager report.
Good evening, Laurel Purcell here. We remain on schedule. Everything is the same as it was 2 weeks ago when we gave our last update. Just continuing to track activities as they come near. Sent an email on about starting the structural peer review contract, starting to look forward to that. And also the offsite traffic study. Those are kind of some upcoming activities. So we're going to be tracking those over the next couple of weeks. Also towards the end of this month, the design development documents will be completed. So we're starting to ramp up in the next few weeks or so for the end of this next phase of design. So, just keeping with things the way that they've been rolling so far. Again, participating in the enabling discussions. It's pretty much quieted down with all the cost estimating. So that's pretty much our update.
Thanks, Laurel. Any questions for Laurel? All right. We'd love to hear everything's still on its schedule, Laurel. Those are the words. Communication subcommittee report, we're actually going to defer this. We actually canceled the communications subcommittee that usually comes right before these meetings. If you remember from last time, we kind of have some tasks in place to start collecting communication, moving towards a potential Zoom meeting coming up, as well as a newsletter. So we're trying to figure out the coordination of those two things and making sure we provide the next project update back out to the community. So all that stuff is in the works at this moment. Anything else I need to add around communications?
Nope, I think you covered it.
Awesome, thanks, Kat. Anything for professional partners subcommittee? I know we haven't met, but I don't think there's anything in addition, correct?
Nope, no update. The professional engineer, the third-party engineer, and the commissioning agent, when that's decided, part of the RFP was to approve the contracts that were included. So it would really just be a signature from them on that aspect.
Okay, perfect. And so final report before we move into new businesses, financial report, anything, Kat?
No additional expenditures since the last meeting. We have an updated invoice tracking report that will be included with the minutes, but that just is inclusive of the invoices that are on tonight's agenda. Just to keep track of all the expenditures for each of the central office, new FHS project by each of our professional partners.
Great.
Thank you, Devin, for that tour through it.
Any questions at all for the financial report? Excellent. All right, we're going to move right on into new business then. So our first order of business is some invoice approvals. So we have been talking about this for a while, and here's going to be our first execution of bundling these invoices for approval. So I'm going to ask for one motion to approve the invoices that you see here that are also included in your agenda packets. But just as a reminder around this, as we open it up for discussion, if there's conversation or questions you might have about something in particular, we will have an opportunity to have that conversation. If we need to pull something out, we can. So it's not, I don't want you to think this is more for efficiency than anything else, but we also want to make sure we have flexibility to have discussion if necessary. Make sense to everybody? Okay. So if I could get a motion to approve the invoices as stated. I don't know how I phrased that, Cap.
I just is listed in your agenda packet.
Listed in your agenda packet. That's how we'll do that.
So moved.
Second, Johnny.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you. We are unanimously approved. Excellent. All right, saved us a little bit of time there. We'll take
Finally
it.
remembered to do it this way, so.
It's all right, Kat.
Very
It's all
efficient,
right.
though.
Yes, exactly. That worked out great. All right, so next order of business is G2. Devin, can I be a pain, and do you happen to have that, the notes part of that, so I can read off
Yeah, give me 1 second.
additional details, just because I didn't print it out? There's all our invoices. There it is. Perfect. All right. So could I get a motion to move to executive session to review and discuss the RFP responses for commissioning services in accordance with Connecticut general statutes as stated?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. So any discussion as far as just details here? The attendees in executive session shall be limited to voting and non-voting members of the Farmington High School Building Committee, representatives from TSKP Studio, representatives from Construction Solution Groups, and representatives from O&G Industries. Approval of the motion shall be by 2/3 vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimously approved. So we will move into executive session. If you remember virtually, you should have received a separate link for executive session. So you will actually exit off of this meeting link and then go into your executive session link. This meeting will be held for us to return back to. So we should see everybody in executive session in a moment. Devin, you just let me know when we're ready to jump back in.
Sounds good. I think we're waiting for 3 or 4 more.
Okay.
All right, Meg, I think we have all voting members.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so coming out of executive session, can I ask for a motion to select IES as the finalist for commissioning services?
Motion.
Second, Johnny.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Excellent, unanimously approved. Congratulations to IES. We'll move right on to G4. So could I get a motion to authorize the town manager and professional partnerships subcommittee to negotiate and sign a contract with IES for commissioning services?
Motion.
Second,
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Excellent.
Sorry, I get
Unanimously.
exposed. Oh my
Aye.
God.
I was like, usually it's a no. I don't know. You're good though, Wendy. You're all set. You're good. All right. So it sounds like we were unanimously in favor. So we are good to go there. Thank you very much, everybody, for that conversation. So definitely a good step in the right direction. So we do have, if you remember, one final agenda item that we added during the chair report. So could I get a motion to discuss and give direction on the early enabling package?
Motion.
Gus, this is Wendy.
Excellent. So I'm going to open this up for discussion. Mark, I'm going to have you start us out here just because I know we've got some additional information to help guide the conversation. So I'm going to have you start there if we could, please.
Sure. So not sure if Devin, you have the spreadsheet to share. Otherwise, I can just share my screen and pull it up.
Mark, yeah, why don't you go ahead and share your screen?
Will do.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry about that. All right, so we did a quick assessment of sort of a cost breakdown between what the cost of the temporary parking lot would be and what the early enabling package would be, I put together this spreadsheet to try to best identify costs for each. We understand that the design of the temporary parking lot is a necessary piece of this and was approved for the schematic and design development at our last meeting. I do want to point out that at that meeting, we had simply approved the SLR and Richter Segan dollars. So, you know, as TSKP has still been leading the charge through this, there is their 10% of all of these items. So I've put that in the pending item there. If we were to not have TSKP proceed or oversee any of this further, we would have to have that conversation. We would have to contract separately with SLR and Richter Segan and have to make sure, you know, we'd have to double check to make sure what the purchasing agreement is. If we could even, our purchasing cap would be if we could contract with those folks. But the idea here was to show you the cost separation for the design. I know there's been conversations about the parking lot, and if it were less than what we had identified, would there be less design involved? Those things have, you know, as I've been sitting in on some of these meetings with planning and zoning and things like that, I think it's safe to say that the parking lot that we're designing is what's going to be expected to be installed for the course of a 3-year term. So schematic and design development, these were the two costs that we had approved, which is $22,200. So we would say that there's a $22,200. So there's a $2,200 cost pending there. If we were to move forward with construction documents, so we review the schematic and design development drawings and we say we're going to move forward with the construction documents, the additional costs for those documents from SLR, Richter and Segan, and then TSKP's markup would be an additional $20,570. There is some portion of the construction administration that I've included in here. All of SLR's work is predominantly with the temporary parking. There's a very small piece of what they do within the early enabling package that they included in their scope sheets originally. And in speaking with Mike at Richter and Segan, Mike Segan identified that, you know, about 2/3 of his cost, which was $14,700, 9,700 of that would be in his construction documents related strictly to the parking, and the remainder of that would be in this early enabling package. And then he said that there's additional construction administration that would be required. But remember that both SLR and Richter Segan gave us sort of numbers that were not to exceed, or so dollars that if we don't spend all on the construction administration, then it's not, you know, then you're not spending it all. So it's only time there's required for them to be out there. TSKP markup on that CA, and then remember we carried an MEP electrical budget number of 16.5. This is a number if in fact we're required to put up like temporary light poles, design some sort of more than just you know, gas-fired temporary light poles that you know, get turned on at night and turned off, or something to that effect. That if we needed something designed, we wanted to carry dollars in there for electrical. It doesn't mean that it has to be spent, but we wanted to include it because Richard and his team had identified it as a number. There is some CA in here. This is really 10,000 in design, or 11,000 in design, and 5,000 in construction administration of that. So I included it here. You could take this out and move it below the line if we felt that was important. But you know, the sort of all-in number on the temporary parking would be about $70,000, and could be potentially, you know, as low as 55,000 or so on the temporary parking. The early enabling package, so the remainder of items, so the construction documents, Richter and Segan are doing a considerable amount of work. You heard Richard speak about the access road moving up. some of where the temp fence is going to go, the topsoil pile locations, and looking at all of that. And that would be sort of to create the construction documents of that would be this portion, about a third of their overall construction document original quote. A 10% markup for TSKPs would be $500. So I've got a $5,500 in pending for the early enabling. There is $1,200 in here for permitting. So Richter and Segan basically said they've got some work to do as far as presenting to the town for permitting. There is the cost to go to OSCGNR. So I carried, he had $1,800 in here to go to the state, make that presentation to the state. And then, you know, Richard and Michael, under your numbers here, you had $10,000 plus $5,000 for construction administration. I broke them out through OSCGR and bidding. You can identify if those numbers should be flip-flopped or more half and half. But the idea is really you've got about $10,000 noted in your proposals for this early enabling piece and this construction administration piece of that. So if we're going to go early, you're going to have to spend some money on the remainder of the construction documents, meetings with the state, putting together a separate bid package to go out to the vendors, and then to administer. So because we're out there early, there's some construction administration that normally wouldn't happen or would be rolled in to the rest of the project, the normal CA, but this would require additional visits because it would be done earlier in the process as opposed to just all in with the rest of the construction. So based on my conversations with Mike Segan and with Richard earlier, this is kind of where I've come up with the split for the dollars to be spent. So approximately $35,000 if you all decide to go early. These dollars would be dollars that would be spent out of contingency to make that happen.
And Mark, it's my understanding that the professional partners would need some direction from the building committee on the on if we are proceeding with the early enabling basically now.
That's correct. We've sort of come up to the wall here. You heard Richard speak that, you know, the consulting team and O&G have sort of been moving forward, knowing that the schedule is creeping up. So they've had preliminary conversations, even in our planning and zoning meeting. There were conversations about the temporary parking lot, but also, you know, at the early enabling package. So all of this goes and gets approved through P&Z one time and in time for us to get a package to the state and then get this out to bid early enough so that the work can happen in the summer. If you know, we're now sort of up against the wall as opposed to missing our sort of window. And if that's the case, then what would happen is the early enabling package would not be early anymore. It would just go back into, you know, the actual scope of work. It's shifted back to the construction schedule and happens after all the bidding is done and awarded, and they start construction in September. Or that sometime in that time frame, in the fall. So again, the idea behind doing the early enabling package allows for all of these temporary provisions to be set up prior to the arrival of students. All the signage, barriers, the temporary bus routes, all of those things are already in play. The topsoil pile gets moved. There's no large heavy equipment moving back and forth across the campus while kids are there, trying to figure out off hours when to make that happen. So so there's plenty of, I think, logistical benefits to it, and I would say it's a one-time learning curve for students, families, bus drivers at the beginning of school, as opposed to this temporary provision gets installed, and then, you know, when folks arrive the next week, things are different, and then they're different again until we get to where we would be after this early enabling package.
And if the committee, Mark, did decide not to do the early enabling, there would not be any additional design fees.
So if they decide not to do an early enabling plan, then these costs,
Right,
go away.
right, because now we're separating, because I think that was some of the confusion last time is
Yep.
early enabling versus temporary parking lot. So the
Yeah.
cost just to go early, not including the parking lot, is roughly $34,000. So if the committee decides not to go early, there are no additional design fees. That $34,000 goes away.
Correct.
Mark, when would if you did the early enabling, when is the parking lot, the temporary parking lot completed?
Laurel, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, it would have to be completed before school starts, because the whole idea is that we turn over the site to you, the project parking lot, with the fence installed and the new temporary parking lot installed. So it will be done before the start of school. So mid-August.
Mid-August. And then what if it was the normal timeline?
It would be all done during the school. We're not really starting work on site until beginning to middle of October. So we would be starting this work middle to beginning of October, and it wouldn't be done until sometime in November. So
And
we'll
you
be-
mentioned something, sorry, you
Yeah,
just
I was
mentioned.
just gonna say, we gotta beat the asphalt plants closing as well.
You mentioned something about the walkway going up to the high school. Wouldn't it be safer if we just use the current walkway from the library up the hill and then the crossing guards where that's where there's a location right there? Wouldn't it just be easier and safer to do it that way and not have the cost of an additional walkway up?
I think that's something that needs to be studied by the design team. That's part of the schematic and design development phase is, do we really need a walkway and where should it go? It's all part of this development if this is what we're gonna do.
Okay. I think Mark mentioned that there was extra cost for that or something, designing that. Or something.
It would be part of that is in that schematic design development that's happening already.
Okay, thank you.
But I want to say that thank you for breaking this out. It's a lot clearer. We got hung up for many minutes last time, just looking at the pre versus after. $34,000 is a lot of money, but it's for the confusion and all that. I get it. Like, this makes a lot of sense to do it early. The only thing that I would hope is, because the only question mark I still have, and it can't be answered tonight, is, what does that final design look like? And is there any VE that could be done that could shave, 10, 15, 20,000 off of maybe removing that sidewalk? And, we sort of try to make it up in the back end, if that makes sense. If you guys feel comfortable that as you design this, that we may be able to, really shore up parking spots versus lost and gained, and making sure that, we're leaving those even, and then maybe there's an opportunity to save a few grand here and there, simple little things, then I'm good with this. Because I totally understand doing construction with, a bunch of people running around and, traffic patterns. It's already a disaster going up to the high school, let alone when you throw an entire project in the front. So as I see it broken out now, it's a lot clearer. I do understand there's a little bit of an extra cost. I do think it's worth it. And I would be supportive of it with, hopefully that, as we go through schematic design and we finish this over the next meeting or two, that if there is an opportunity to, have the kids walk around the easy way versus the long way and save a few grand on an asphalt sidewalk to kind of make up for it, if it makes sense, that we go forward with this.
And Johnny, we will have our estimators take a look at the, obviously the schematic design that gets completed, and see if there is any way of saving, like you said, a few dollars with that design. So we will go through that exercise.
Thank you.
How many parking lots are we talking this temporary? Like, if you delay, like, are we having to have the students lose their parking spot for that one semester if we don't do the early enabling?
Right now, Go ahead.
The
I'll let Tracy-
temporary parking right now is scheduled to be in place for at least 2 school years. And so the target is 135 spaces to replace that, which we're taking not only for the construction fence for the new building, but for the alternate approach loop, pickup loop. So in total, we're displacing about 135 spaces up the hill. So we would replace that number down by the library.
Okay.
Hey, Mark, do we have idea? Oh, I'm sorry. Was that you, Michael?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead. Mine might be easy. I don't know. Do we have a general idea? I know, we're always talking about these being costs that are going to hit against our contingency. Do we have a general idea where we stand? I know you had mentioned that in your update. Like, do we have a general idea of where we stand on that spend? And we talked about maybe being able to kind of move some of the balancing spend around a little bit, just to kind of give us a general idea of where we sit there.
Sure. So I don't have the breakout for us tonight. That's going to be part of what I hope to present at our next meeting, and just sort of identify where we are in terms of spend on contingency. But all of the items that we had approved for theater design and consulting, those items would be part of that, and then the these items would be part of that. But if you look at the grand scheme of things of maybe a little over 100,000 here and maybe 100,000 on the other end of things, and you've got about 6.4 million in contingency, you might be going from 6.4 million to 6.2 million, or 6.3 to 6. I have to get the exact numbers as we play through that, but you still got about I would say that you're probably still gonna have about $6 million in contingency after all of these items are identified. I could we have a budget item here. I'm trying to think if I have it. Oh, you know what? I put it into another folder, but so I'm going to keep this one up. But we do have, as part of that budget, there's a cost tracker, a contingency cost tracker that's on page 2 of that budget, and it basically plays into the formulas on the budget. So every time we take dollars from contingency, we identify which bucket they're going to go back into, or other line item on that. So we'll start to share that monthly as we track our spending.
Okay, and that includes, like we had talked about, so the additional consultants that we brought on and all that stuff in addition, right?
Right.
Okay.
So if I were to share with everybody. And the other thing too is we have to break them out for both, one for the high school and one for, so this is premature to share, but I'm gonna just quickly, so everybody gets an idea of, this is the budget drafts that we started to put together. So basically, this will be inclusive of the field house. We had an original budget of architectural design, all of our professional fees, our construction costs, FF&E, technology, and then our grand totals. And then what we did was I'm putting in the budget adjustments. So the 100,000 give back on the design fees, the 100,000 give back on the professional fees. And then our GMP costs, so the things that came out initially, so that this blue referendum project budget, this is what we agreed to on referendum day, right? So this 129, 550, 849, That's just the high school. There's a whole separate one of these for central office. And then what we have to do is basically take our state project budget now with the field house and revise this referendum project budget to now include the field house in this. We have to get to this 131,666,047. That's the number that came in the letter from the state as identified for the high school. So this construction number, I was just kind of playing with the numbers a little bit, but what we'll need from O&G is what the dollars actually are for their high school budget plus the field house and what those dollars are. And then we'd need the same thing on the central office side. So here we'll be adding, on the central office side, we'll be subtracting. But I think what I really wanted to show you was that we would then, what's been paid to date, what's the balance to pay, we'll have to put our reimbursement dollars up here. And then I'm going to hide us. Over here, we have on page 2 what we call an owner contingency tracking. So we start with our amount. This was the amount of the contingency in the referendum. This may change a little differently based on where we are, but it'd be close to that. So then we start with that starting amount, and then we start to identify our spend down in the contingency, and that's how we would track it for both of those budgets. If we were to look at the items that I was just sort of doing a separate spreadsheet for with pre-con expenses, we would include all of the things that come up in sheet 1 here. So environmental consulting, the food service design. So these are all the ad services. So you've got, 30, 60, 70, 80, 90, so a little over 100,000 here. I want to just point out too that on the commissioning side, if we were to use IES numbers, those are those numbers here, but we have, we've got a large, we've got a credit coming back from O&G for the tab services. And then what we carried in our budget numbers that those commissioning dollars, there'll be money left in those commissioning dollars as well. So probably 150,000 or so that would be left in commissioning. And so those dollars we can use for some of the other things like the third-party consultant and the structural review, the peer reviewers. We think maybe we can utilize some of those budget numbers for those items. I hope that's helpful. Probably more information than you asked for today.
I'm just trying to get an idea of, where we stand. I think we're just all being cautious this early in the project.
Sure.
Of spend, especially against contingency, knowing that we've got more value engineering to do and, stuff that's hitting our ad alternates or other things that we might want to bring back in. So I think we just got to be conscious of that conversation of if we're going to, talk about that 34,000, we have a clear understanding of the benefit and also the fact that that's 34,000 we can't spend someplace else potentially. So I just want to kind of lay that all out on the table and make sure everybody was clear on that.
So I had 2 questions, quick questions. The contingency is 6 million. Maybe if it's not for this meeting, it's okay. The 6 million odd, little over 6 million contingency, is that off the 129 referendum number we assume somewhere we're going to save, or it's already baked into that 129?
It's baked into that 129.
Okay, so it's coming from different line items that we already have before.
Yep, the budget is the budget. Yeah. So however we move those numbers around, that's the number we have to work with.
Okay, perfect. So the second one is, I know last time, I might have misunderstood the temporary parking design we had not included in our budget. It was some kind of a mess. So the question I have is the actual construction cost of the temporary parking. Is that already accounted for, or is that something we still need to budget for?
Mark, you want to answer that?
I was going to say that's accounted for. When we did our last cost estimate, we knew that there was going to be a temporary parking lot, and we've included it in the latest cost estimate.
Okay, just the designing part was missed in that case then.
Correct, because we don't carry design costs, just the hard construction costs.
Perfect, thank you.
Michael?
Sure. I have
I'm wondering why, if we have in our last design, in our last cost estimate, I believe we left maybe a cushion space of about 300,000. Am I remembering that correctly? That we left some space for ourselves. So I'm just raising the question, you know, could we simply apply, and I don't remember what the difference was. Does anybody have that?
I think it was just about 300,000, Michael, off the top of my head. I think that's where we came in with the VE.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think at that point in time, we sort of paused and said, rather than adding anything back, there's going to be some other things that come out here. So I you know, in balance to things, I would hope that maybe this could be applied basically into the GMP. We maybe don't need to touch contingency, given that we have some of that cushion already built in there. I'm in support of doing the early enabling package here. I know that we have a number that we are carrying for the cost of the construction of the temporary parking lot in our GMP estimate. That's the most current. I still remain concerned that I feel like that parking lot may be giving us more than what we need in a temporary parking. So I do want to raise the concern that I think there's some value engineering opportunity that exists there. And perhaps we ought to have that discussion before we launch into designing the thing. Because my concern is that if we're saying, well, we're carrying a cost of a temporary parking lot that is fairly refined, I just want to know what we're designing. So I know that I'm supportive of the early enabling, know that I'm supportive of the design of that. I'm just a little concerned that we don't have our head fully around whether or not there ought to be some more value engineering as to the specific parking that we get. Does that make sense?
Yes, Richard, I was hoping you or Michael might.
So it's a very good question, Michael, but unfortunately, it's beyond, it has to be determined by planning and zoning. This may be a condition of approval by planning and zoning. In Michael's initial discussion with planner and staff, they did talk about the temporary parking lot and the idea of it being anything less than a paved lot, anything less than a structured drainage system is not something they were going to entertain. You know, I mean, is it possible to do a cheap temporary lot? Sure, you can do a gravel lot. I think you asked at an earlier meeting, what do other projects do? And so I canvassed the projects that we've done in the office, and about half of them are gravel lots and about half of them are paved lots. So it could go either way, but when you go to planning and zoning, I think this will be something that they will be looking for. So you may want to value engineer it, but your hands may be tied by the approval process.
Now, we don't have to pave it for a 10-year parking lot. It's only got to remain for, it's only got to be plowable for 2 years. So there may be some savings there, but
And I think if I recall, Michael, in the meeting with planning and zoning, I think it was Bruce. Wasn't Bruce? Who was it from SLR who was identifying the fact that maybe we could, you know, instead of designing it to a 100-year flood, maybe we could do it to a 25-year. Something.
Right. Just to be clear, you know, right now the condition at that of the F hill, for lack of a better word, is that's all sheet flow that comes off of that hill. It's all lawn, and it comes down to a public sidewalk and Route 4, which is pretty well trafficked. On days like today, where you have a lot of snowfall and then overnight freezing, if that sheet flow doesn't saturate into the soil, it comes across the sidewalk, it comes across Route 4, and it freezes. So in putting hard paving on there, which is thought to be needed to be able to plow the parking lot as a condition of public safety, the drainage does have to go somewhere. And that somewhere isn't across the sidewalk into Route 4. So it really becomes an engineering and public safety issue for the town. And that's how your professional staff outside the bounds of this building committee will likely look at it. So we'll continue to have discussions with them. SLR was discussing the idea of, rather than structured storm retention, we might design for a 25-year storm and try to create a belly there between the sidewalk and the edge of the lot that would just allow for some retention and then gradual infiltration. And so we have if we can get these services authorized and move forward, we could engage the staff in these discussions and work back and forth to the middle ground.
Understood. So it sounds as though any VE exercise is going to happen with the town employees guiding what it is they're hopeful for and what can be.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is one of those areas where, as good as this building committee is, they aren't the sole deciders.
Okay. The last question that I have, I think I raised it at our last meeting. And it's really hard for me to see. I have this on my phone right now, but I believe that there are two sections of which Richter and Segan has a fee associated both with the, part of the 34,000 and part of the 71. I guess again, I would maybe ask to Mark, have we reviewed any other proposals that would give us concern as to whether or not all of those fees are appropriate that are in there? I have a limited set of points of reference for the costs associated there. It seems curious to me. I raised this the last time, why SLR isn't able to do all these components and why the majority of the fees that are part of the 71 and part of the 32 appear to be the landscape architect.
So I think that they, two things, and I'll ask Richard or Michael as the way that they've got their consultants lined up, that I imagine each consultant has a piece of the scope of the work of the original contract, so that their contracts are probably written in a way that one has one certain responsibility and the other has another. Could we get rid of Richter Segan in this portion beyond design development and say, thanks for your schematic and design development, we're going to have SLR finish this off? We probably could. Would you save a few bucks? Probably a few. I think where you might have the most, remember Richter Segan is doing more than parking lot work, where SLR's documents are all parking lots. So they're looking at they've been working on the temporary access road, creating actually what will be the permanent that added turn lane there up at the top of the hill. That's part of this. All of that falls, or most of that falls on Richter Segan. Same thing with the topsoil locations and identifying the actual area available for the amount of topsoil that we're talking about stripping. So they do that portion of it. Could SLR do that? They probably could have.
So let me revise my questions. It isn't so much I'm appreciating, in terms of how originally these things may be set up and whose bucket it falls in. So I have less of an objection of, is it SLR? Is it Richter Segan? I guess the question at the end of the day that I'm asking, Mark, is when you add both SLR and Richter Segan, whose ever bucket it falls in, is that an appropriate amount to be paying? It from my point of reference of having done something similar to this, it seemed high. And that's why I'm asking you as sort of the owner's rep here to bring your expertise to say, is that number appropriate, no matter whether it was all SLR or all Richter Segan or all player number 3, if we had such a thing? Is the number right when you add it all together?
Hey, Michael, is it for which part of this are you concerned about? The parking lot portion?
I'm going to say, I think it's the parking lot portion. Yeah.
Okay. Not that I don't want to have the conversation because I think we need to dig a little deeper there.
Yeah.
And I think
it is a
Yeah, go
huge
ahead.
job. But it is something that I'd love to hear back. That yes,
Right.
Michael looked into it, and we believe that the parking lot dollars combining SLR and Richter Segan is an appropriate amount. And if it is, then I'm in, because that's what I need is the expertise in that space.
Right. I think where some of the ad comes into play is some of the landscaping that's got to go in early, some of the design for those things, the berm, the fence. Well, there's no berm, but how they, all of those things kind of added to their task list as we this started to grow. So I think they're earning their money based on everything that they've been putting in. If we looked at it from we didn't go out to bid. We could have put this out publicly. We didn't want to do that. I think that so I think in that respect, again, I think they're earning their money. That I think where there might be some savings is in that their CA numbers and the estimated hours that they would actually need to be out there, sort of responding to questions and overseeing the work. And I think that that's why we kind of went to them and said, hey, can you guys do this? Sort of give us an hourly rate, which we thought was fair, that we can kind of spend down against. And if we don't need you, we're not going to call you.
So those numbers in that respect are a sort of not to exceed number.
Yes, correct.
From the CA. Okay.
From the CA perspective.
Okay.
Richard, you confirm that, right? That's how we put that together. Yeah.
Hey, Mark, can we just pull up that sheet again? I just want to make sure everybody's clear on.
Right. And I think
Because the motion that we have on the table, just so we're clear for tonight, is that, for us to get some consensus on how to move forward on that early enabling piece. So I just want to make sure everybody's focused on the categories.
So
that we're
Meg,
looking
you're only interested in our vote on the 34,000 tonight.
That's
for our
that's
support.
correct.
All right, clear, good.
That's
and
correct.
I think the rest of that, I'm going to pull this back up.
And we don't even need a vote, right, Kat? It's just like we're gaining consensus to move forward on it, is in essence what we're
Right,
doing.
yes,
Right.
we're giving our professional partners some direction on the early enabling. And we're only focusing on that because we've already authorized the temporary parking lot to begin schematic design. And I think the conversation is we obviously need more discussion on what the scope of that temporary lot is and to what extent it's being built to. But I think we're already saying we need the temporary lot. Let's begin that process, but we're still have that question mark around early enabling.
Right. And I think, Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, that the schematic and design development will kind of come back to this group and we'll review where we are before we move into CDs.
Yes, that's correct. We want you to see the picture and make some decisions about whether you want to proceed with CDs. Yes, you will see that before we proceed.
Thank you.
I'd just like to mention with schedule, construction documents for all of this work, which this parking lot would be part of this early package, needs to commence on February 22nd. So, at the next meeting, you guys will need to decide whether to include this parking lot at this time with this early enabling phase.
Understood. Thanks, Laurel.
Yeah, so it sounds like we have to have some conversations ahead of that, right, to understand really what the true requirements are. And maybe we need to some conversations with the town, kind of tighten some of that up and make sure we're clear on what actually do we have to include. Is how I understood it. Is that true?
Yeah, but in order to proceed with putting the whole package together, they've got to start in about 3 weeks doing that. So all of this program, I consider it pretty much programming. How much do you actually need? How many spots do you actually need? All that, you really only have 3 weeks to get through that process.
Okay.
Right. So, Richard, would it be fair to say that the schematic and design development is well underway and that, we would have opportunity to review those even in a working group
Yes, exactly. That's what Michael and I were just talking about. It is underway, so we can bring the diagrams to the working groups and we can discuss it further.
Great.
Perfect. All right, so I think the motion that's on the table, I think, is for us to kind of get some consensus from, with input from obviously our full committee, but, consensus from our voting members on that early enabling. So it's that 34,000 additional spend associated to that early enabling package. So, we just kind of want to get people's thoughts on what kind of direction we want to give. So are we moving forward with early enabling or not? Understanding that that's the additional cost associated. I think we heard from Johnny, right? Johnny, you're still in the same place?
Still in the same place, and do back up, some of Mike's comments of, the Richter Seegan stuff, but still in the same place, and with the caveat that, working group gets a chance to digest this and really dig into it with a recommendation for us to vote on the following meeting.
Michael, you as well?
Yes, yeah, I'm in the same place.
All right, Wendy, any thoughts?
No, I think everything made sense. The good questions were asked, and I know there's extra costs, but for the timeline discussed and how it won't interfere with school and get everything rolling, I think it'll be worth the cost, as Johnny had mentioned.
Okay, Chris?
Yes, I'm on board in proceeding early enabling. I think this project is going to cause enough friction through its process that if we can explore this exit ramp for that, I think it's very worthwhile, subject to the concerns that were raised, but I'm on board with it.
Excellent. And then who do we have then? Suraj and Sarah, right, are remaining?
I'm in agreement as well. I won't repeat everything everybody said, but I agree with what's been said so far.
Suraj, any additional thoughts or? Oh. Did we lose him? All right. I didn't hear anything from him during the discussion. So it sounds to me, as far as the building committee and voting members discussion today, it sounds like the direction we'd like to give to our professional partners is to move forward with the early enabling package, understanding that $34,000 spend associated. Accurate?
Yes.
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 Agreed.
Awesome. What do you need for official to close the motion, Kat? How best do I do that?
I think because it was to discuss and take direction, we did both. I think you just need a motion to approve that.
To approve that we did discuss and provide. Okay. All right. Okay. So could the motion was to, as Kat said, to discuss and provide direction. I think we did that. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, unanimously approved there. Anything else related to that item, Kat? Are we all set with that, or anything else you need?
I think we're good. It seems like the professional partners have a clear understanding that we are moving forward with the early enabling. And like it was just summarized, the temporary parking lot will go to the working group, which has a meeting next Wednesday. And we can try to make sure that some important town officials that need to be there to help weigh in on that decision are there also.
Excellent. Professional partners, you are good?
Yes.
I hate to lump you all in together, but rather than call everybody out.
I'm good.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, everybody. No, that was a great conversation. I think we kind of needed to flesh it out, now come back to the table, so that I think that worked out really well. We have a really clear understanding now. So That all worked out well. All right, so we are on our last item, which is adjournment. So could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we will adjourn at 6:31 this evening.